Welcome! In this series of short videos, we will look at topics for the PowerBasic Console compiler. Today, we will look at the use of the console itself. One of the most common questions I get asked is why are there two versions of PowerBasic? Why is there a Windows version and a console version? And what's the difference? While there is an overlap between both versions, the Windows version of PowerBasic is generally used for applications which are user-facing. Those applications which require a graphical user interface, where the user can interact with it and the program can process in the background and display information to the user, which the user can then decide what to do next and move on to another part of the program. Console applications, on the other hand, tend to be applications which run without user interaction, or at the very least, mostly without user interaction. These tend to be applications which are running on large computers or servers, running in the background, perhaps as Windows services, to perform tasks. These could be large number crunching applications, or applications waiting for events to happen, or applications which are processing large files and producing a standard output. I have probably written 10 times as many console applications as I have Windows applications. One of the most misunderstood elements about a console application is that it can use just as much memory and just as much resource on the computer as a Windows application. Most people, when they see a console, think of the old days when you used to have a DOS window. When personal computers first appeared on the scene in the early 80s, many of them ran with MS-DOS as their operating system. This allowed you 640 kilobytes of memory. At the time, 640 kilobytes seemed a great deal of memory, because prior to these machines, computers tended to have 64 or 96 kilobytes of memory. So 640 did seem a big step up. However, as with all things, this was transitory. Computers and the operating systems and the software that ran on the computers soon got very memory hungry. This caused problems in applications which ran within this 640 memory window. So as technology moved on, the amount of memory that could be used on computers became larger and larger. However, there was still a need for applications to run in the console. If we run the command.exe, this would bring up on our screen a standard console window. Now, while this looks similar to the old DOS windows users used to see, this is in fact a text interface to the entire Windows subsystem, and any applications you run in here are quite capable of using as much memory and as much system resource as any application you would create with a GUI interface. So let's have a look at the console compiler. We're now running the console compiler. This is a standard common display library which we've used for many of the videos. These were set up to allow you to run programs that would display quite normally in both the console compiler and the Windows compiler. So if we have a look at the libraries themselves, we will see that in here there are sections of code which are specific to the console compiler. If we have a look at the funwait command to see what it actually does, there is our funwait command. It's using 2 lines of code. So we can replace this single call with the 2 lines of code, and the program would run normally. What we're doing here is the con is the console and the std out is the standard out. All this does is send this piece of text to the console. So if we run our program, it would display press any key to exit on the console. You can use this to put any piece of text onto the console. Now, if we look at what our prep output is actually doing, prep output is using a virtual window. The virtual window is setting up a number of rows and columns. Setting it to 120 means although this may exceed the size that's allowed on screen, it allows you more lines in the buffer. So all we're doing here is we're setting the caption of our console, we're setting the colour of our console, foreground and background, and we're setting the location of the console on the screen. So if we ran this now, we would see it would display exactly as it did before. To save a bit of typing, you of course can use the prefix command. If we have a look at the help for the console commands, you'll see the number of options on the console command is extensive. There are many commands within the console window you can actually use. Now we're not going to go through all of these today, but it's well worth a look at a few basic ones. What we've done so far is we've used the colour command to set the foreground and background colours. This is a very simple command with only 3 parameters, one of which is optional. The foreground option sets the colour of the foreground. Now we're picking 10, which is light green. The background can be set to any colour you wish. If you leave it as -1, then whatever the background colour was before, it will remain as unchanged. The optional parameter of count is slightly special in that if you do include this, it will cause the colour attribute to be applied immediately to that number of character cells, starting at the current location. The caret itself, the location, is not moved, and the underlying characters are not changed. So in many cases, console applications run without much user interaction. However, you may wish to push information out to the console to let you know what the application is actually doing. This is especially important for applications which may run for a long period of time. And getting some feedback from the application to let you know first of all that it's actually still running is very useful. The console compiler has a large overlap in functionality between itself and the Windows compiler. The main difference between the two is the console compiler has commands to do things to the console, and the Windows compiler has the ability to open windows and run event handlers for actions on those windows. All the other common code, including calls to Windows APIs, can still be done within either compiler. So this has been a very short introduction to the Windows console compiler, which we'll build on in the subsequent videos. That's it for today. Thank you for watching.